The child no one wanted. Some stories don't start with love, they start with regret. And sometimes the person you ignore today is the one you'll never hear from again. This is the story of Ethan and Claire, once lovers, now strangers, bound only by a child neither of them fought for. A story of regret, lost chances, and the silent pain of a boy who was never chosen. Stay with me, because tonight, a child disappears, and it's already too late. The last time Ethan Montgomery saw his wife Claire before the divorce, he wasn't even looking at her. He was staring at his phone, scrolling through unread emails, thinking about work, thinking about everything except his marriage. "Ethan," Claire said quietly, sitting across the table from him, "are you even listening?" He sighed, finally setting his phone down. "Claire, what do you want me to say?" "I want you to say that you care." "Of course I care." "Then show me," she whispered, gripping the edge of the table, "because I don't feel it anymore." Ethan rubbed his face, exhaustion pressing down on him. "Claire, I work 15-hour shifts. I come home, and you want me to talk about feelings? I don't have the energy for this." "You don't have the energy for me," she corrected. "You don't have the energy for us, or for Lucas." Ethan stiffened. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Claire's voice cracked. "When was the last time you put him to bed, Ethan? When was the last time you asked him about school? He's 7, and he feels like a stranger in his own house." "That's not true." "Then ask him." Silence. Ethan didn't ask, and maybe that's why 3 weeks later, Claire walked out of his life, taking only what mattered: her clothes, her books, and their son, Lucas, leaving behind an empty house and a paper with her signature at the bottom. A divorce, a clean break. At least, that's what he thought. But there's no such thing as a clean break when a child is involved. The custody battle that never happened. People say that parents fight for their children, that they go to war for them. But what happens when neither of them fights? Claire wanted to move across the country, start over, chase her dreams. Ethan wanted to stay buried in his work. Lucas? He just wanted a home. But home was the one thing no one was willing to give him. The day of the custody hearing, Claire looked at Ethan across the table, exhaustion in her eyes. "You take him," she said. Ethan blinked. "What?" "You take full custody," she repeated. "I can't do this right now. My job." "Your job?" Ethan scoffed. "Claire, he's not a problem to get rid of. He's our son." "And I love him," Claire whispered. "But I can't give him what he needs right now." "And you think I can?" "I think you should try." But Ethan didn't say yes, because deep down, he was afraid she was right. The night everything changed. The last time Claire called Ethan, he ignored it. He was sitting in his office, exhausted from another long day, when his phone buzzed. Claire's name flashed on the screen. He stared at it. Then, he let it go to voicemail. 30 minutes later, Claire was dead. A car accident, a rainy road, a moment of bad luck. She never got to say what she called for. And Ethan never got to say goodbye, the boy no one fought for. Lucas didn't cry at the funeral. He stood beside Ethan, dressed in a suit too big for his small frame, his hands tucked into his pockets. People whispered around him, "Poor boy, no mother now." Does Ethan even know how to raise a kid? He barely wanted him before. Ethan heard every word, and deep down, he wondered if they were right, because he didn't know how to be a father. And maybe he didn't want to learn. Days turned into weeks. Ethan tried. He really did. But Lucas was quiet, withdrawn, a shadow in his own home. He never asked for anything, never cried, never said "Dad," and the worst part, Ethan didn't know if he wanted him to. Then, one night, Lucas was gone. The front door was unlocked. His small bed was empty. No note, no goodbye, just silence. And for the first time, Ethan felt what it was like to lose something he could never get back. The apartment was too quiet. Ethan had spent years coming home to silence, but this was different. This wasn't the peaceful, exhausted silence of a long day. This was the kind of silence that came after something was taken. He stood in the hallway, his breath shallow. The door to Lucas's room was cracked open, just enough for Ethan to see inside. He pushed it open the rest of the way. Lucas's bed was empty. The sheets were slightly rumpled, but untouched, like they hadn't been slept in. His backpack was gone. His favorite stuffed bear, the one he never went anywhere without, gone. The window was closed. The front door was unlocked. And just like that, Ethan knew. Lucas had left, and Ethan had no idea where he went. The phone call that changed everything. His hands were shaking as he grabbed his phone. He tried to think logically, but his mind was a whirlwind of panic. Call the police! No, wait. Maybe he just went to a friend's house. Does he even have a friend's house to go to? He dialed Claire's mother first, his voice hoarse. Is Lucas with you? Lucas? Her voice was startled. No. Why? What's wrong? Ethan's stomach twisted. He's gone. There was silence on the other end. Then, in a voice colder than he'd ever heard, she said, What did you do? Retracing his son's steps, Ethan tore through the apartment, searching for any clue, any sign of where Lucas could have gone. There was nothing. He checked the kitchen table, Lucas's usual spot, where he would sit quietly and play with his food. His plate from dinner was still there, half-eaten mac and cheese. He hadn't planned on leaving, not at first. But something had made him decide to go. And Ethan had to figure out what. The first place he looked, the city was too big. Too many streets. Too many places where a 7-year-old could disappear. Ethan drove through the neighborhood, checking every spot he could think of. The park, the corner store where Claire used to buy him candy. The school, even though it was closed. Nothing. Each place was as empty as the last. And with every hour that passed, Ethan's chest grew tighter. What if he had waited too long? What if Lucas was already gone for good? The last voicemail. Hours passed. The sun had set and the cold night air bit at his skin. Ethan sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. His phone buzzed. A voicemail. His heart pounded as he pressed play. But it wasn't Lucas. It was Claire. That same old voicemail. The one he had ignored the night before she died. Ethan, maybe we made a mistake. Maybe we should talk about Lucas. Click. Silence. Ethan gritted his teeth. Damn it, Claire. Why didn't you just tell me what you wanted to say? His voice cracked. Because maybe she had. Maybe she had been trying to tell him that Lucas needed more than 2 parents who were too selfish to fight for him. And now, she was gone. And so was Lucas. And Ethan was left with nothing but an empty house and a silence that felt like punishment. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. His hands trembled as he answered. Hello? A pause. Then, Dad? Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Lucas, where are you? Are you okay? Another pause. I thought maybe you wouldn't care. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Lucas, listen to me. I care. I care more than I ever showed you. And I am so sorry. Silence. Then, finally, I don't know where I am, Dad. And just like that, Ethan had one last chance to be the father he should have been all along. A desperate search through the night. Lucas, listen to me, Ethan said, trying to keep his voice steady. Tell me everything you see around you. There was a pause. Then Lucas's small, shaky voice came through. Streetlights, a bus stop, and a gas station. Ethan's heart pounded. He knew that place. "Okay, stay right there. I'm coming." But before Ethan could shift into drive, Lucas whispered something that made his stomach drop. "Dad, what if you don't find me in time?" Ethan swallowed hard. "I will. I swear to you, Lucas. Just hold on." The moment that changed everything. The city blurred past as Ethan drove, running red lights, barely breathing. By the time he reached the gas station, he jumped out of the car before it even stopped rolling. His eyes darted around frantically, and then a small figure curled up on a bench, hugging his knees. "Lucas!" The little boy flinched, looking up. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan saw it. Tears in his son's eyes. Tears he had never let Ethan see before. A father's last chance. Ethan ran to him, kneeling down, hands shaking. "Buddy, I'm here. You're safe." Lucas sniffled. You really came?" Ethan's throat tightened. "Of course I came." Lucas wiped his nose on his sleeve. "I thought maybe you wouldn't want me anymore." Ethan felt like he had been punched in the chest. "Lucas, I was the one who failed you, not the other way around. But I swear to you, kid, I will never let you feel unwanted again." Lucas looked at him for a long time. Then, finally, he threw himself into Ethan's arms. For the first time in years, Ethan held his son like he meant it. And this time, he didn't let go. Ethan expected relief after finding Lucas. But as they drove home, the silence between them was heavier than ever. Lucas sat in the passenger seat, his arms wrapped tightly around his backpack. He stared out of the window, not saying a word. Ethan wanted to speak, wanted to tell him how sorry he was. But apologies meant nothing if they weren't followed by action. So, instead, he focused on driving, on getting them home, on figuring out how to fix the damage he had spent years creating. Lucas's first night back. When they stepped inside the apartment, Lucas hesitated. He looked around like he was stepping into a stranger's house. Everything was the same, yet different. His bed, his toys, the family pictures on the wall, pictures that still had his mother's face in them. Ethan finally broke the silence. "You must be tired," he said. "Go get some rest, buddy." Lucas nodded, but instead of going to his room, he turned toward the couch. "You don't have to sleep there," Ethan said quickly. "Your bed's still yours." Lucas shrugged. "I like the couch." Ethan felt his chest tighten. Because Lucas wasn't just picking the couch. He was keeping his distance. And Ethan couldn't blame him. A father's guilt. That night, Ethan sat in his room staring at the ceiling. He had done everything wrong. He had ignored Claire's warning. He had treated Lucas like an obligation instead of his son. He had let work, grief, and selfishness blind him from what really mattered. And now, Lucas was right there in the next room, but he felt further away than ever. Ethan picked up his phone. The last voicemail from Claire was still there. He pressed play. "Ethan, maybe we made a mistake. Maybe we should talk about Lucas. A pause. "I think he's hurting more than he lets us see. And I think we're too caught up in our own pain to notice." Click. End of message. Ethan closed his eyes. "I see it now, Claire," he whispered. "I see it now." But seeing it wasn't enough. He had to fix it. Day 1. Earning trust. The next morning, Ethan woke up early. Lucas was already awake, curled up on the couch, flipping through a book. "Hey, buddy," Ethan said, trying to sound casual. Lucas looked up briefly. "Morning." Ethan hesitated. He had no idea how to do this. How do you act normal when nothing is normal? Finally, he blurted, "I made pancakes." Lucas blinked. "You cook?" "Not well," Ethan admitted, "but I figured I'd try." Lucas looked uncertain, but he got up and followed Ethan into the kitchen. The pancakes were slightly burnt. Ethan scraped the worst parts off before sliding a plate in front of Lucas. Lucas took a bite, chewed slowly. Then, "Moms were better," he mumbled. Ethan exhaled. Then he chuckled. "Yeah, kid. I know." For a split second, the corners of Lucas's lips twitched upward, and Ethan saw something in his son's face he hadn't seen in years. Something that looked almost like hope. Day 7. Breaking the walls. A week passed. Lucas was still distant, but the silence wasn't as cold anymore. Ethan learned small things about him, like how he liked his sandwiches cut into triangles, not squares, how he still slept with his stuffed bear but hid it under his blanket, how he loved superhero comics but never asked for new ones. Lucas still didn't trust him, but he was starting to believe Ethan might actually be trying. That was progress. But then, one night, Ethan heard muffled sounds from Lucas's room. Crying. Ethan hesitated outside the door. For years, he had ignored these moments, let Claire handle them. But now, there was no Claire, and Lucas only had him. He knocked gently. "Lucas?" Silence, then a sniffle. "I'm fine," came the quiet response. Ethan didn't believe him, so he did something he'd never done before. He walked in. Day 10. The question that changes everything. Lucas was sitting on his bed, hugging his knees. His eyes were red, his face puffy. Ethan sat beside him, not too close. "You want to talk about it?" he asked softly. Lucas hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "Do you still miss Mom?" Ethan's throat tightened. "Every day," he admitted. Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Do you think she'd be mad at me?" Ethan's stomach twisted. "Mad at you? Why would she be mad at you, buddy?" Lucas wiped his nose. "Because I left. Because I ran away." Ethan felt his heart break. "Lucas, listen to me. Mom loved you more than anything in the world. And if she were here, she'd just want you to be okay, to be happy. And I want that too." Lucas sniffled. Then finally, he leaned against Ethan's side, and for the first time, he let his father hold him. A family rebuilt. Over the next few weeks, things didn't magically fix themselves. Lucas still had nightmares. Ethan still struggled to figure out how to be a good father. But something changed. They tried. They ate dinner together, watched movies together, talked about things they never had before. And one night, as Ethan tucked Lucas into bed, his son hesitated before speaking. "Dad?" Ethan's heart skipped. That was the first time Lucas had called him that in years. "Yeah, buddy." A pause, then, "Are you gonna leave again?" Ethan's throat tightened. He knelt beside the bed, looking his son in the eyes. "Never again, Lucas. I swear." Lucas studied his face. Then, after what felt like forever, he nodded, and for the first time in a long, long time, Lucas believed him. A house that feels almost like home. 3 months had passed since the night Lucas ran away, and things were better. Not perfect, not easy, but better. Lucas no longer flinched when Ethan reached for him. He no longer hesitated before sitting at the dinner table. He no longer avoided calling him Dad, but there were still cracks. Nights when Lucas woke up from nightmares and refused to say what they were about. Days when he seemed distant, lost in a world Ethan couldn't reach. Moments when Ethan caught him staring at the door, as if deciding whether to stay or leave. And that fear terrified Ethan, because for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of losing Lucas. He was afraid of not being enough to make him stay. An unexpected conversation. One evening, as they sat on the couch watching TV, Lucas suddenly spoke. "Do you remember Mom's favorite ice cream?" Ethan blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, chocolate chip cookie dough. She used to steal bites from mine even when she had her own. Lucas's lips twitched, almost like a smile. I remember she used to say food tastes better when it belongs to someone else. Ethan chuckled. Yeah, that sounds like her. Lucas was quiet for a moment, then, softly, I don't want to forget her. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. You won't, buddy. I promise. Lucas looked at him. Do you think she'd be proud of us? Ethan swallowed hard. I think she'd be proud of you. Lucas frowned. What about you? Silence stretched between them. Ethan exhaled. I think she'd say I took too long to get things right. But I think I'm finally trying. Lucas studied him for a long time. Then, finally, he nodded. And for the first time, Ethan felt like he might be on the right path. The last voicemail, fully heard. Later that night, Ethan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Claire's old voicemail still sat on his phone. He had played it dozens of times, but tonight, he let it play again. And this time, he listened differently. Ethan, maybe we made a mistake. Maybe we should talk about Lucas. A pause. A shaky breath. I think he's hurting more than he lets us see. And I think we're too caught up in our own pain to notice. Silence. Then, softer. I'm scared, Ethan. Scared that we're going to break him. Scared that one day he'll look at us and see nothing but the people who failed him. Click. End of message. Ethan shut his eyes. I won't fail him, Claire, he whispered. Not anymore. And for the first time, he truly meant it. A father's promise. The next morning, Ethan woke up early. Lucas was still asleep, his small frame curled up under the blankets. Ethan hesitated, then quietly stepped inside the room. He pulled out a box from the closet, one he hadn't opened in years. Inside were old pictures, memories of a life that felt like another world. He took out one photo, Lucas as a baby, Claire holding him, both of them smiling. Ethan placed it gently on Lucas's nightstand. A reminder, a promise, that no matter what happened, Lucas would never feel alone again. Some love stories don't end, they just change. And sometimes, a second chance is enough.